Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim. We talk about horror movies on this show, and in this episode, we are talking about a new film called Ghostland. So we will start spoiler free, as we always do. We will warn you before spoilers, and that is how this is going to happen. So, hey Tim, how are you? You good?
Oh, I'm just fine and dandy.
Lies, all lies. He's miserable. He's miserable all the time.
Oh yeah. No, I'm dying inside for sure.
Oh, good. As long as we're on the same page, then. As long as we're on the same page. So, what is Ghostland? That is a question. What's funny about this one is that me and Connor looked at the trailer on the movie news like 3 or 4 months ago, and the trailer confused.
That is funny.
I was getting to the funny part, Tim.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, it's a good start.
You asshole. So we watched the trailer on the movie news, and it confused us quite a bit. We weren't really sure what it was because the trailer was really confusing. Was it like a haunted house movie with dolls? Was it like something about like a sister who's got like an imaginary sister? Like, it was really hard to follow the trailer. The synopsis was much better from what I remember, but I remembered the movie when it popped up. I was like, oh, that's okay. That's what this is. Okay. So yeah, we're gonna watch it. Also, this movie is also known because when I mentioned this, Tim, do you want to do this? Carter said, "Oh, is that the one where the actress is suing the film company for being injured?" And I went, "Wait, what?" And I looked it up. Yeah, one of the actresses in this, Taylor Hickson, got a very nasty scar on her face, which she is now suing them for because they claimed it was safe to bash her head into some glass, and it smashed. It wasn't safety glass. It wasn't a stunt woman. She got, and there's photos online of the giant scar. And naturally, she thinks this is like I mean, great pain, medical expense, so on. But also has probably stopped her from getting some work in the last year. She does appear to be on the TV show Deadly Class coming up, so it looks like at least she is getting some work going forward. But
cool.
not that diminishes the fact that she's got a giant freaking scar on her face that will be there forever.
Yeah. Yeah. I was really sad when I read that article. I'm not very familiar with her work, but she seems like a fine actress and very attractive and stuff. And then when they were showing you the pictures of like the injury and stuff, it does look really bad. So I definitely hope she gets something. It also kind of made it like hard to watch because there were several incidents in the movie where
she's
banging on. And I'm kind of like, ooh, was that the scene or was that the one?
Yeah, I can't imagine the morale on the set was very good when she came back from the hospital after getting 17 stitches.
Definitely.
And I can almost, because it sounds from what I read that she like actually shared concerns on, like, she's like, hey, bang your head into that harder, and she's like, is it safe? Like, should we be doing this? And I'm like, oh, it's perfectly safe. Yeah, fine. And all I can think of is the director is maybe a bit of an asshole who went, well, at least she's meant to be banged up for the rest of the movie, so it won't look out of place. Jeez. I can just imagine him saying that. Who is the director? Who am I blaming for this? That's probably what
the guy that did Martyrs, I believe. I don't know.
Pascal Laugier. Pascal Laugier. I'll say that.
It's kind of hard to imagine anyone in the movie industry being, not just the nicest, most upstanding person. That's why I was a little shocked when I read that.
He did direct Martyrs. He also directed The Tall Man, which I never saw, but it looked really bad.
It's not a Phantasm spinoff.
No, it's Jessica Biel. Okay. It's one of those movies where I've seen it on Netflix or Amazon like a million times when I'm browsing. Like the poster of her, and there's like a guy in a hood behind her, but like I've never watched it.
Personally, I think it should be against the law to name your movie The Tall Man if it has nothing to do with Phantasm, but that's just me.
I don't think there's that many of us that would think that. I mean, I'm agreeing with you, Tim. I think of Phantasm when I hear The Tall Man. I don't think the public at large does, unfortunately.
Well, we're here to change minds, if nothing else.
Yes, absolutely. So it's a shame what happened to her. Obviously, that is not how movie sets are supposed to work. It's supposed to be safe. And they, to save time and money, just took a risk, and she is suffering the consequences of it. So that sucks. It's bullshit. But hey, we'll talk about the movie itself and if it is any good. And so what is it? It's a movie where we start off with teen daughters, Beth and Vera, who are moving with their mother to this house that her aunt or whatever left her out in the middle of nowhere, as so many horror movies tend to start. And the sisters are bickering. You know, Beth's kind of the bookworm. She likes to write horror stories, and she uses a typewriter because she's old school. And you know, Vera's more of a normal teenage girl she's not super stereotypical. Like, she's not like one of these movie archetypes, but she's more normal in that she cares about boys and so on and so forth. But in a more of a fairly realistic way. She's not like an 80s movie character. It's like, oh, I like boys, I don't like anything else. And stop being a nerd. She's a bit harsh with her sister. She thinks she's weird, but hey. And I get to the house, there's some like sort of rumblings that there's like these weird murders going on. So we see in the newspaper at one point about these people who kill the parents and keep the kids around. And of course they go to the house, there's a bit of setup, and then they get attacked. And then we jump forward to present day, where Beth is now a famous horror writer. She writes horror novels, and her sister needs professional help. The trauma of being attacked that's put her through has left her in a very, very bad state, and Beth is worried about her. And it's kind of about revisiting what they went through, and the lasting effects. And is there something else still going on? That is kind of the gist of the movie. That's the premise. There's more to it. There's turns and there's twists, and we'll talk about that in spoilers. I'm giving you the spoiler-free synopsis right now. And with that, again, I'm just reminding Tim we're in spoiler-free territory, because I feel like there's a lot of this movie you could spoil very easily. So Tim, did you enjoy Ghostland?
I gotta say, there's so much going on in the world right now. It's a very depressing place. There's a lot of real world issues that's been on my mind. So it's nice to just kind of sit back and just forget all that and just watch like a really nice, fun, happy movie like this. So
still not answering the question, I'm noticing. We're still going here.
I'm just joking, obviously. This I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say this was kind of a little bit of a depressing movie in my mind, but I did actually like it. I thought it was pretty good. Nice pacing. I was interested all the way throughout in it, but just man, the only thing is just such a bummer. And I watched it like in a weird place in my yesterday, where I was just kind of like after like looking.
Before you continue, I just want to say what Tim just said. I watched this in a weird place in my yesterday. That is an epic sentence. That is something you say in philosophy. It's like, oh, what does he mean by that? Something in my yesterday. Oh, he's talking about his past. Oh, continue.
Well, I mean, I assume that there are probably professors that show these videos in college classes. So
these podcasts, these reviews, these movie discussions.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, why not?
I thought you were a professor. I thought
I am part-time.
Okay. That's an old joke for anyone who doesn't get that. Way back in the early days of this show, at one point Tim Welsh Drunk said that he said that he was a professor when it comes to horror films, compared to me, who is merely a student.
Like in kindergarten compared to me.
Like, and I'm a professor. He said that while drunk, and for a long time I wouldn't let him forget the fact that he thinks he's a professor. Well,
I mean, we'll see if the fans agree, which I'm sure they will.
They can go back. They can go back and watch the review of The Boy and know for a fact that you're not a professor, and you're a professor in bullshit. I'll give you that.
It's funny because I think the opposite, but I will let the fans decide. What the hell was I saying before I so rudely interrupted?
You watched that in a funny place in your yesterday.
Yeah. No, I watched it after reading way too much news yesterday and just being super depressed, and then let me watch this movie. And I should have known, watching a movie from the guy that did Martyrs, probably not going to be the happiest film.
Yeah, Martyrs, a film that we're still to do on this show, but it will come. We will do Martyrs at some point.
Yeah, but I'm going off on like weird sides and tangents and stuff. But bottom line, actually, I mean, take all that stuff away, and then obviously again, like the whole lawsuit thing did make a little weird at parts, but take that away. I actually did enjoy the movie and thought it was pretty good. Like, not the best, like certainly not the greatest horror movie we had this year, but yeah, I thought it was a good enough watch. And I will say, like you said, there are twists and turns in it, and I actually kind of enjoyed what it did with that stuff.
Hmm. Right. Well, you liked it more than I did.
Okay.
Uh, I didn't hate it. I mean, if actually, the funny thing is the opening thing I want to say about this movie is that I'm kind of annoyed because the first like 15 minutes tricked me into thinking I was going to like it.
Okay.
And unlike you, I did not like the twists and turns.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I
Okay.
kind of got annoyed by them. And admittedly, I think the trailer actually did this to me. Is that
Mm.
because I was expecting certain things, like, oh, not expecting, because it's not. It wasn't like a question of anticipation or what I expected in terms of like how it would do something. It was more the trailer implied some things, so I kind of knew that twists were coming in some
Oh, okay.
capacity. I didn't know exactly what the twists were going to be, but you know,
It, to be fair, I don't know if it helps or hurts it, but I didn't watch the trailer
yeah.
beforehand, so I really didn't know anything going
I
in.
basically
And
I just there was just I had this feeling of there's something fishy going on here. There's more to this.
I would say like as far as the kind of the big reveals and stuff
Mm.
that happen, I don't want to act like, oh my god, I thought they were so brilliant and they blew me away. But I do think it was like interesting, and I would say like yeah, like I don't think I've, at least off the top of my head, I can't really think of like a movie that did like exactly this. Like
Oh, that's
it's
fair. That's fair.
so I don't know. I do think yeah. I don't want to see a bunch of other movies like this, but I did think like, oh, okay, this is interesting what they're doing.
Hmm. It's fine. I didn't realize it was the guy who did Martyrs. I've got something I
Mhm.
want to point out when we get to spoilers that
Oh,
relates to
okay.
Martyrs a little bit. Because I
Okay.
was going to talk about this scene and joke about it, but now that I know it's from Martyrs, I'm like, oh, this adds a whole new layer to my material here. Uh, yeah, because I think when the movie starts, I think the one thing I will say in terms of, especially since I now know it's from the guy who did Martyrs, is that it visually looks pretty good. Like visually, it doesn't look
Yeah.
cheap. It looks like a proper film. Because I think sometimes we get these direct to VOD movies and they look kind of cheap and nasty. Not all, but obviously there's some great
Definitely.
ones. But it didn't
Yeah.
have that look. It looks like a proper movie.
Mhm.
And I think there's a bit of tension. I was actually getting some. It's funny because obviously Martyrs is a French film. Was it not Spanish? Oh, I can't remember now.
No, Martyrs is French. I'm
It's
pretty
Martyrs
sure.
French. Okay. Um, but yeah, Mars is a French film, and I was funny because I was thinking of another French movie during. I was thinking of High Tension a
High
little bit.
tension. Yeah.
Particularly at the start with the ice cream truck. The killers are in like an ice cream truck,
Sure.
and the way it rolled up, and they're in the station, and it comes out. I don't everything about that was making me think
I
of High Tension. Just the tone, the way it was been
mhm.
handled, the build up to it was just I don't know.
Yeah, I can definitely see a high tension in there. Two things that stood out to me about it is it felt very Texas Chainsaw to me. Like if there's anything that was an influence on it, like if I had to guess, I would
Mm,
say Texas Chainsaw. And the other thing is it kind of felt like less horror movie and more like a survival horror game to me at certain points, which I've been maybe I've just had that on my mind lately. Um, because I've been playing some and stuff. But I don't know. There were some parts that are like, ooh, this kind of reminds me of like a game a little bit.
yeah, it's frustrating because I think there's lots of things that I want to like about it, and
Mm.
there's some small moments I like, but I feel like I my problem with the main twist that happens kind of in the middle of the movie is I felt like for the,
It's like kind of like hard to talk about it like
it
that.
is,
Like,
but when that twist happened, I kind of got annoyed because I felt like the previous 30 minutes were a waste of time. Does that make
I
sense?
I can definitely see that. You know what? I think maybe I would have had more of a problem with it if it didn't kind of like call back to it towards the end.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Like to me that kind of like I agree with you, it would be kind of weird if it was that one-off thing, but uh yeah, because of something else that happens on towards the end of the movie, I felt like it justifies it a little bit more.
Yeah, there's a couple of fun scares at the start. I did think though that the killers were a little bit comical, like they're a little bit over the top. Like, there was no
Oh, yeah.
subtlety to them. Like, the big guy, they're referred to as the witch and the ogre, I believe, at one point. So that's what we'll call them. In the credits, they're referred to as Fat Man and Candy Truck Woman.
Okay.
But I think witch and ogre are a bit more succinct.
Yeah.
So, like, when the ogre first appears, he's got this kind of this good sort of introduction scene where he just kind of runs into the shot, and it's actually a really cool moment. But immediately after, he's kind of like this obvious, like, he's heavy breathing, he's looking at the dolls and going, and I'm like, okay, I get it. He's a big crazy man, all right.
Yeah.
I get it. He's a stereotypical killer. Just, it felt a little bit cartoony, I guess, is what I'm.
Oh yeah,
what I'm saying.
definitely.
Yeah.
And I feel like we haven't seen these kind of people lately, but I feel like these kind of killers were like the rage back in the kind of early mid like 2000s, like with the Texas Chainsaw reboot and like
High Tension.
Hills Have High Tension, Hills Have Eyes, like the kind of big lumbering, heavy breathing oaf kind of guy. I feel like was in fashion for a while.
Yeah, there's definitely like a Leatherface sort of side to that you can correlate. Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is a terrible movie. This isn't a movie that I would put in the, like, when we're doing our top and bottom list of the year. Like, and I don't think, unless, I mean, depending on how much other shit we watch, I mean, I could argue this should be on the bottom of the worst 10, but I'm not expecting, if I was to compare it to last year's bottom 10, there's no way this would make it with those 10 movies, right? There's no way it'd be on that list.
Yeah, that's fair. I think, it depends on the year. Like a really good year, it's definitely not going to make it. But if it's kind of a light, lean year, it can sneak its way into like a 9 or 10 spot maybe.
Yeah. Because like I say, I was kind of into the opening. I think once it started to play with shenanigans, though, it kind of took me out of it a little bit. Because I had that kind of thing where I felt like the movie thought it was really smart. And
yeah, I can see that.
And I didn't really think it was that smart. I thought it was quite clear there was something up. And then when it started to reveal things, it almost it became back to what I wanted from it, but it just felt a little bit generic. I don't know. And for me, the pacing I thought was weird. And I think this is maybe where we disagree, is that I thought that 30, 40 minutes, that you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
I felt like that really drained the energy out of the pacing for me, because when it came back to what I kind of wanted, it was kind of like, my momentum's kind of gone. Like, I'm just kind of now here, and I'm like, okay, do your thing.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't argue against that too much, but I guess for me, like I never felt bored at any point.
That's fair.
So,
That's fair.
I mean, maybe that shouldn't be a glowing endorsement of like, oh, the pacing is so great, but like, I definitely never felt like bored, or like, surprisingly enough, I wasn't like itching to check my phone, or like,
yeah, no, I get it.
So
I think I don't want to be too harsh either, because I feel like it falls into this weird territory where I don't think it's bad.
Sure.
But I don't think it's succeeding in what it wants to do either. It's kind of fallen into this weird, like, we've got a competent like filmmaker who knows how to shoot a scene, and we've got like there was maybe a couple of points of bad acting for me, where the acting wasn't super taut.
Yeah.
You know, just here or there. I thought adult Beth at times was a little bit ropey here or there.
You know what? I would say like it seemed so. I mean,
we're about to get real here, ladies and gentlemen. Tim's about to drop a truth bomb on you.
No, it's not gonna be anything big, but like, I mean, so we've already kind of mentioned it. Yeah, you see, adult versions and young versions of these characters. Like, I didn't even notice that they were like different actresses at first. Like,
is that a good thing or a bad thing though?
No, I mean, I guess it's not. I guess it's not bad, because you want characters that like look similar and stuff. But like, I guess because when they're young, it's not like they're super young. Like, it's not like they're 10 or 12 or anything. Like, they're like what, kind of late teens or something. Like probably like 15, 16 or
yeah. I mean, they're still
like
they're still they still have to do what the mother says. But yeah,
yeah. And then like when you cut to them as like an adult, though, they look like they're probably what, like early mid-20s or something.
I mean, she's got like a 5-year-old son, so mid-20s. Yeah, mid to late 20s, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah, they're probably wanting a little older, but they didn't
Yeah.
like look that older to me.
Well,
But I
well,
mean, I feel like a lot of times in movies you would just have the same actress play
so what made me
them.
feel old though is actually at the start of the movie, like I knew there was going to be a time jump because I'd seen the trailer.
Mhm.
And at one point the mom pulled out like a smartphone, and I went, wait a minute, this is meant to be in the past. Why is it a smartphone? And then I sort of did the math, and I went, let's say it's a 10-year jump. I'm like, oh no, 2008, smartphones were starting to be a
Yeah.
thing. Damn it, damn it,
Oh.
damn it. I'm not happy about it, Tim. That's all I'm saying. I'm not happy.
Oh,
Um, but
it's all right.
yeah, so
You'll age gracefully. Don't worry.
yeah, there's some nice moments in here. There's a couple of scenes that I quite liked. I think though the twist halfway through sucked some of my energy out of it, because I think all the stuff before the twist that was building up to it, I actively didn't really like that stuff as much because it kind of changed what the movie was for a while.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, that's fair.
and I'll get to, so yeah, that's why to wrap up kind of my overall spoiler free thoughts is that yeah, so
So it's one of those tough ones where yeah, it's not offensively bad, but it's not overly great. So you don't want to trash it, but you also don't want to praise it. So it's
yes, exactly. So
So
you can
I
probably
liked it a
guess
little bit more.
roughly where the number's going to be when I do the top, my out of 10 at the end. You can probably guess roughly where that number
Yeah.
is, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously definitely liked it more than you, but I mean, I'm still on a similar page though, where I'm not like, oh my god, what a revelation! This is like the greatest movie ever. Like, no, it's like,
I mean, yeah,
it's not
don't get me
overly
wrong.
great, but
I was based on this trailer, I was half expecting this to be complete horseshit. And it wasn't
and you
that.
made us watch it.
You have made me watch some right shit, Tim. Don't you even dare.
Oh, come on, don't. When have I ever made a decision?
We have an episode that's not went up yet. We've an episode that's in the bank for when we need an episode. And Tim made me watch it saying it was good, and it was one of the worst freaking things I have ever seen in my life.
All right, to be fair, I watched it and I said, "Hey, I watched this. If you want to do it, I never, I didn't put a knife to your dick and said you're watching this."
That's a really specific threat. Why did you say that? Why knife to my dick? That's really specific.
I don't know, there's so much gun violence. I didn't want to say gun to your head. I figured knife to your dick is maybe a little more.
I think the real gun control is more important than the metaphor gun control.
Sure, yeah, I agree. But so I don't want to put those vibes out there. So
Okay,
just
all right.
so for anyone paying attention, I will never hold a gun to your head. I will potentially hold a knife to your dick, but that's as far as we'll go.
Or vagina.
Or P, is there something you want to tell me?
What, you're not going to threaten men? There's no women that you want to hold at knife point?
I'm only threatening you. You don't make me out to be some monster here. I'm not just like
You just said to the audience, I will never do this, but I will do this. That
To
implies
you.
just speaking to everyone. You're speaking to the collective.
Not to our fans. Our fans are safe. It's you who should worry. You should know this by now. As soon as I find out, like listeners won't know this, but you won't give me your address. As soon as I find that out, I'm knocking on that door. And it's gonna be good or bad, depending on the last episode we record.
I'll have to make sure we do the boy Redux just before I tell him the address.
To be safe, just obviously this is all in good fun, but just to be safe, edit this out in case you do get murdered. It will look pretty damning. It will look damning to me.
People, I want this clip. I'm going to edit that last part where Tim said, that disclaimer at the end. I'm going to edit that part out and just put out the first part. So in case that I do turn up dead, Tim will get blamed for it no matter what. Good.
Oh well.
Yes. the only thing we found at the crime scene was there's fur. Did we test it in the lab? It belongs to a goat. Goat? Who could it be? The goat killer's on the list.
There's just like a big smashed in half Blu-ray copy of The Boy, just like jammed in your larynx.
Also, Tim wrote a comic book called Goatman, and he likes goats a lot. That hints that. We've not made fun of the goat stuff for a while. I feel like I'm doing some old jokes here, and I'm just making sure the newer audience that maybe have only jumped on board in the last while are getting the jokes. I'm just making it clear, making it obvious. Anyway.
Yes. So just to be clear, those issues of Goatman are still on sale. So just hit me up if you want to. Well, I don't want to sound cocky, but some of the best comic books you'll ever read.
Tim, I've been saying this for ages. You have to get them on Comixology, submit them, get them digitally.
Yeah, yeah. It's I'm so lazy though. When are we gonna get an intern? That's what I need to know.
I know, the mail fuzz intern. I know, that has to be a thing. We need to hire someone. Put them up for $1 an issue.
Yeah.
You make a fortune.
Yeah. What about that Matt fellow? He could be an intern? Why not?
He's a slacker. Yeah, he could be an intern. Yeah, give him all the busy work. Yeah, I like it. I like the way you think. Full spoilers for Ghostland. That's what we're talking about. So full spoilers from this point on for Ghostland. Okay, so the big ideas here, right? So it's established early on when Vera's complaining about Beth that she found like some like fake magazine interviews that she'd written. Beth had written about herself as if she was a famous author, right? And I'm like, okay, I wonder what this is setting up. And I didn't know what the twist was going to be from the trailer, but I did know from the trailer it clearly hinted that something might not be real. It hinted that someone, either Beth or Vera, had an imaginary friend or world, or maybe even one of the sisters wasn't real or something, but it hinted that something wasn't real.
God, right? That sounded... Actually, after this, I should go back and watch the trailer, because that sounds really annoying.
Yeah, but it definitely gave me that vibe that something's in someone's head. Whether it's a person or, in this case, an entire, like, life fantasy future. So they get attacked by the two killers, the ogre and the witch, and the mum who got her head bashed actually gets back up and like fights with the witch, and again, she's not a real witch, we're just calling her the witch because that's what they call her later on. And the mum actually kind of wins and stabs her, even though she's also pretty beat up herself. And it sort of ends like a jump cut moment, and and then Beth wakes up present day. She wakes up in her mid-late 20s, and she's having a nightmare, and her husband is like calming her, does like, no, it's okay, honey, it's a long time ago, you're fine now. Actually, later on, there's also a fake, jump scare, wake up, oh, it was all a dream moment. There is one of those. I'm not counting this one because this one's just a natural transition to say, okay, this is the in the future, and she's still thinking about it. That's okay. That's okay in my book. But the scary thing happens. Oh no, it was just a dream, a trope. I'm not letting that fly by. So she's a famous author. She's on TV for an interview. She's making tons of money. It's selling tons of copies. Oh, but she's humble. She doesn't want to know how many copies. She's quite happy. And she gets like a scary phone call from her sister who's delusional, and she goes to visit her mum, who for some reason is still living in this house that all this bad stuff happened in.
Yeah, I thought that was weird, yeah.
the sister is like in the basement, and she's like completely crazy. She locks herself in, she gets chained up, she like says really cryptic things, and Beth feels guilty for leaving and going being an author. I should be here with you and my sister, and mum's like, no, you live your life, you shouldn't feel guilty about that, and it's a whole thing. And then there's like creepy messages, like someone writes "help me" on the mirror. There's like, some creepy moments with Vera where she's like naked and she's like saying really weird stuff, like, "Oh, they've been torturing me all this time. Now they're going to torture you," and all that stuff, right? And it's implying that there's a supernatural element, right? That's what it's kind of implying. And I don't know what that noise is at Tim's place, but something creepy.
Some motorcycle or something.
Ah, okay. Right.
It's gone now. They can't hurt you, Pete.
Thank you. I feel good now, Tim. And so and all the while this section, because I enjoyed the first 15-20 minutes. The killers were a little bit cheesy and cliche, but I liked the moment when the truck drove past them and it was just that creepy wave, and
the first time you see them.
Yeah, and I liked them in the station, and you got the sense the truck was outside, and when the headlights turn on outside, when Vera's pissed at her mom and you see her coming from the background, and I liked all this stuff.
Shot, yeah.
It was typical kind of, building up to the killers, home invasion. I like that kind of thing. It was okay. It was well shot. Characters were pretty reasonable. I think they're solid enough. They're not the best characters ever, but they're fine.
And it was I mean, it felt like a little overdone, but I did like the house. Like it's definitely like trying way too hard to be creepy. Like there's just animals and dolls all over the place. But I mean, I think it worked for the movie. Like maybe because it's maybe it's kind of like you said, maybe it's trying too hard, like it wants to be like smarter and try to be more creepy. But I don't know, like if I kind of looked at it more as like, or at least my like viewing of it was more like, oh, I mean, they're not trying to like be subtle at all. Like,
oh yeah, they're salty. So you've got this like 30 or so minute part of the film because it's around the 50. I checked. I was curious when the twist finally got revealed. It was around the 50-minute mark,
Okay.
right? And we went to the future at the 20-minute mark. So there was about 30 minutes of this of like her coming back to the house, having these awkward conversations with her mom, her sister being kind of creepy. And I think my big problem with the movie is that I really didn't like this section. Like, forgetting the twist, like, I was annoyed that the movie turned into this. I was like, really? We're doing, like, us? Like, it's the trauma of what happened. And I mean, that's an okay concept for something else, but, you know, I was like, oh, okay, killers, home invasion, you know, running away from bad guys. Like, I was kind of into that stuff, and that was well shot. And now it was like, oh, there's a message in the mirror. It's like, what's going on? Is the sister doing weird stuff, and is she insane enough now to kill people, or... And obviously, I remember from the trailer, it hinted that something wasn't real. So it gets to the twist, and it turns out that no, all of this is a fantasy. This is Beth in her head escaping and thinking she has this nice life, and this night went okay. She forgot that her mother really gets stabbed to death in front of her. There's a very brutal, quick flashback to her being stabbed. And Vera's actually not insane. She's the sensible one, and they're back to being teenagers. And she's like, no, we're still here. They're both like, you know, swollen faces, bloody, bruised. And it's like, no. And she's like, no, you have to stay here, Beth. You know, this was your fantasy. And there's like a picture of a guy in the wall. That was the husband. Like, you saw him, and that was your husband in your fantasy. And you're back with me now. You have to help me fight. And it's maybe been a few days, a week or something, and they've been trapped.
That was my big question.
Yeah.
Like, I think maybe this is in part of me not realizing that they were back to being like the younger versions or whatever. Because like at first I thought like she was still like her grown-up version, and that like her fantasy had been playing out in real time, so they'd been like trapped there for like 10 years or something. But then
I can see
you know,
that,
by the
yeah.
end of the movie, when they like interview the that like convenience store person, I was like, oh wait, I guess it's just been like a couple of days or something.
Yeah, because it's like they call her and she's like, oh yeah, they were here the other night going to the house. So it's, you know, it's been, you know, a couple of days at best. And arguably, once it comes back to this, and it is them trapped in the house, and they're trying to like escape, and it's like the fear of what they're doing, but I still wasn't super into it because my like I say, all of the energy had been sucked out of me because I really didn't like it might be some sort of supernatural thing, or maybe the sisters like doing crazy things, you know, whatever it would have been. It turned into this weird slow build drama that I didn't think was very good, and then when it came back to it, instead of being like still running away from the bad guys, it was like, no, we're being held captive. And a lot of it was like, you know, like they take Beth and like put makeup on her as if she's one of the dolls and like set her up. Now, don't get me wrong, the scene where she like, because the sister, you know, Vera says to her, when you get taken up, do not move and do not cry, just stay still, and you know, like you're a doll.
Yeah, I really like this section, and this was like a part of it to me that like reminded me of like a horror game or something.
Yeah.
Like because they seemed like there was like, you know, very specific rules, like you know, you can't speak, can't cry, can't have them catch you move. You want to try to set off other things to distract the bad guy.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah,
I just wish that instead of the 30 minutes in this like fantasy, we got Vera learning that and like understanding what the rules were.
okay, that's fair. Yeah.
So that when later on when they were being used, it was like, okay, we learned the rules and then we're going to use them to survive. And I never really got that from it.
Yeah, you know, I think it's kind of interesting because I feel like if the whole movie was them just like being captured and being tortured, I feel like I wouldn't like it as much. And if the whole movie was this fantasy with little things peeking out here and there and the occasional jump scare
and maybe not
mystery,
but maybe not finding actually out what the truth is until the end.
exactly, yeah, I feel like I wouldn't have liked that either. But because of kind of like splitting it in half, I don't know what's going on, but
so many vehicles outside Tim's house tonight. Right, continue.
But yeah, I actually think it was kind of a, you know, an interesting like melding of these two different things. And yeah, I don't know, for me it kind of worked. Like, I'm not saying it's the most ingenious thing, and that like, you know, it's not like I stood up and applaud when I found out what they were doing, but for me it's like kind of like, oh, okay, this is kind of nice and interesting. And I think like you, I wasn't enjoying that previous section as much, but once we're out of it, and I was kind of like, oh, okay, and then I was like more on board, and I feel like I enjoyed it because like you know, because where we're going and what we're doing.
I think what's weird about it for me is that you said you wouldn't have liked it if it just went one way or the other, right? And not this what they've done with the movie. And I think I don't know if that's just true for me, at least in the sense that I mean they could just make it all like in real time, them being like captured and then them try to escape, or vice versa. It could be it's all the fantasy, and then we slowly build and build and build until the final 10 minutes where it all comes out and we get the moment. Now, admittedly, those could both still be terrible, but I think if they committed to one or the other and said, let's do this well and flesh it out and do different things with it, like, let's say it was the fantasy the whole time, what you do is, like, things the sister's saying, when we get to the end and it's revealed that this was all in her head, and but like we're almost ready to escape, because when you go back and look at it again, oh, the stuff the sister was saying actually ties into what she was really doing in the real world, like setting up their escape, and it would maybe like line up or something like that. Because then the movie would be about this psychological, what's really going on, and they could, because I feel like it's just this rushed, boring version of it in that 30-minute period. And then likewise, I think the stuff that comes after it when we get back, it's like that feels also really truncated, because okay, it's just the one big incident and then the escape, as opposed to, I don't know, the continuing dread or whatever. Admittedly, that's not terrible originally to just do that. So I'm not necessarily sure. Like, I applaud the effort, I guess, but I think the end result is like, oh, I got 30 minutes of something I don't want. That sucked all the life out of me. And then, okay, what's after this is fine. Like, I thought the scene where she's pretending to be still while the guy's doing his stuff, I thought there was some nice elements in there, but I didn't love it as much as I think I should have done. Again, I think it was a little bit too much. There's all the dolls, and then, and so this is the scene I wanted to joke about a little bit, especially now that I know it's from Mars. So basically, at one point, he catches her looking, so he grabs her by the leg and he lifts her up, and she's upside down. He's holding her up by the leg, right?
Yeah.
And she's so scared that she starts to piss herself, right?
Oh, right.
She's wetting herself. And because she's upside down, it starts trickling down her face. Like, it comes out of her fancy, like, doll blouse thing, and it comes down her face, right? And I was going to just, like, say, oh, that was, like, that almost, I think that was, like, on this fine line of being, like, not inappropriate, that's not the right word, but the way that was handled was on this fine line of being, okay, this is more like a silly moment in, like, a fun horror movie as opposed to a serious moment in a hard-hitting horror movie. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? Because I don't think because Martyrs has a lot of peeing in it, right? This is why it's funny that it's the same guy, because there's a lot of peeing in Martyrs, which is
every
relevant.
director has their thing,
Apparently this guy's is peeing. He likes peeing. And that's a really hard-hitting, like, everything's really grim and nasty movie, and there's nothing like remotely funny about the peeing scene in that. It is, like, so devastating. Whereas this, she's dressed up as a doll, the bad guy's so comical and over the top, and you've got all these dolls around the room, that then you add her pee is literally coming down her face. Like, I was just kind of like, this is kind of clashing tones for me a little bit. I was kind of like, this is feeling like a comedy skit almost at this point. But
yeah, I think that's fair. And then we've seen before that this ogre / fat man, I guess he has something about the dolls, which that's kind of the thing, which interestingly enough, we just reviewed another movie that had a lot of dolls in it, or miniatures, but
oh, okay. I was dolls? I don't remember dolls. I was like, oh, miniatures, okay. I know what you're talking about.
So yeah, and maybe a little bit of not a coincidence, but whatever. But yeah, like, he's basically treating these women as like dolls and stuff, and but he has like a weird thing with the dolls where he like has to like sniff their crotch, and I guess he doesn't like it if. Oh, that's
right. He does that. He smells her. He actually, he's holding her upside down, and he actually puts his head into like her crotch and sniffs it, and I'm like, is he smelling her vagina? What's happening? What's happening right now?
It happens several times, so I guess maybe he must have a thing with like the crotch has to be clean, because in the beginning the younger sister has her period for the first time, and then that kind of prevents her from being chosen by
being attacked first, essentially. Yeah, he throws her away and goes after the older sister.
But forget where I was going with that.
He sniffs crotches. Where was it going with that?
Well, the one thing I did want to mention, though, one of the reasons why this, I think maybe the twist kind of works for me is I feel like if it was just something that this was the whole movie and then it's just revealed at the end, to me it would just feel kind of like a cheap, like gotcha moment, like, oh, we surprised you at the end of the movie kind of thing. But with this, I feel like for me it kind of heightened the terror to like imagine like, oh my god, like what these people doing are so just like brutal and devastating that it's breaking you from reality. Like she can't handle it to the point where she has to make up this whole fictitious life. And like you said, maybe they do go on a little bit long. I don't know if like um maybe shortening it or something
It's like, I
maybe
feel
might
like
have made
in
it
other
work better.
movies,
But
it's normally like one scene, but they'll have one scene of a fantasy, then they'll snap back to reality. It'll be like a
yeah,
2 minute thing, even. And then, but in this movie, it spends 30 minutes of convincing you, oh, this is what the movie's going to be now. We're in the future.
yeah.
This, it's that.
But I like that that's like, oh yeah, it's like, she was so scared that she had to do this. And then also to the point where it's also like that terrifying to the other sister where she's like, she has to like snap her back to reality. Because imagine like you're in this situation with one other person, and like you're scared to death, and to the point where the only other person you're with isn't even in reality, and you're like
Mm.
feel like you're that much more alone. So I don't know. I kind of like that aspect of it.
There's definitely the danger of if it was if the whole thing was in the fantasy and then the twist was at the end. There's the danger of that just feeling like a cheap thing, a
Yeah.
gotcha moment. I think if it was done well, though, it wouldn't. It would be that kind of thing where when you go back and watch it again, you'd see all the, I think there's potential to do it well. I guess
Oh
is what I'm
sure.
saying.
Yeah. Like yeah. I definitely I like the idea, but I agree. It could have it could have been better.
Yeah. So I don't know. So basically like yeah. So they end up like getting out. Basically, there's some chaos as they run around the house. They get out.
Yeah. She basically, as she's being portrayed as a doll, she kind of sees there's another doll that has looks like maybe like scissors or something in its hair that
Mm-hmm.
she's able to kind of sneak out, and when she's on the lap of this guy, basically sticks him in the neck with it. And then actually another funny like something another horror movie it reminded me of is she uses her typewriter to hit the guy over the head, which quick spoiler alert for the movie I'm about to mention. So if you don't absolutely want to know, maybe skip ahead a couple
How
of
can you give
seconds.
a
But
spoiler warning before you tell them what the movie is? That's so weird. They don't know if it's a movie they don't want spoiled yet.
well, because if I'm saying that she hit someone over the head with a typewriter, and then I say the movie, then oh, in that movie someone hits someone over the head with a typewriter. But
I mean, that doesn't sound like a big spoiler to me, but go on.
okay, well, it's that's it. It reminded me of the movie Misery because there's a pivotal scene like that. So,
Okay. All right.
but just in case people might have not seen it, so it's
Yeah, but they wouldn't know that's the movie you're going to mention. They're like, oh, I think I've seen this movie. Misery, I've not seen that. Tim, I know that they get hit with a typewriter now.
I don't just apologize for being overly cautious.
They
You're the
have,
one who mentioned at the start of the show that it's for me to be wary of spoilers. I'm trying to do that.
those people have just went to the cart and taken your comics out of the cart. Like they had them in the checkout on the site, and they've taken them out and said no. Or they're still getting one just so they can burn it. They can spit on it and burn it and go, oh, that Tim, he spoiled Misery for me.
I'm completely fine with that. I'll still take your money.
No shame. No shame.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they run for a good long while, and they eventually come across a couple of police officers who are trying to help them, and that's when like one of them says, "Oh, it's a witch and an ogre," and they're so broken. And they get on. One guy gets on the radio, and they're talking. He's like, "Oh, I'm here at the store right now with Ethel or whatever her name is." So like, she saw them go up to the house, and there's like a little fake out with like a sort of set of headlights where you think the truck's coming, but it's just a regular truck, it's a random truck. But at the end, the witch shows up with a gun and shoots both the police officers. And
So
yeah,
close.
yeah, and then they're put in the candy truck again, and they're taken back. But it is worth mentioning because the cop was on the radio. There's another cop that knows about this and knows that the house of where it is. So he ends up showing up and saving them later on, and shoots the crap out of the witch.
Yeah. And then as they're being like transported back to the house, that's when the younger sister has like her second break from reality.
Yeah.
And you see her, she's like at this big fancy party, and we get like a little special cameo
Go
from
on.
one of one of horror's maybe biggest writers or influences.
Go on.
H.P. Lovecraft shows up in the movie. Obviously not the H.P. Lovecraft. It's an actor portraying him.
Aye, obviously, because H.P. Lovecraft has been kind of dead for a while.
But I don't know. This is I think at this point I was like, this movie's kind of off the rails, and I kind of like that. Like, like it's just crazy to me that like, Lovecraft is now in this movie. All right.
It's worth mentioning as well that the cops that just get killed are in this party, or they're around. It's as if like, oh, she's imagining a world where these people didn't die, like so they're here as well.
I don't know if I noticed that. Maybe.
Yeah, the man and specifically even says something to her as he's taking a drink. He says hello. It was a nice little touch. It was like
that is cool. Yeah.
So I guess it's the idea that she's reverting back into her. And this is where I'm saying that I see the potential in this story where she's in the fantasy, and the arc of the movie for her is actually gaining the strength to choose to come out of the fantasy because her sister needs her help. It's the idea of the bond between them is that they have to look after each other, and she has to fight against her fantasy, against her pain, and have the courage to come out into the real world and fight with her sister to help her and save her so they can both survive. That's your core story. That's your core arc for your character. I think the movie doesn't do a lot of good things with it though. Is basically my bit on the nose, I guess. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. Like I think that is kind of the big thing to it, that they really don't do much with it. Like it seems like that's what they want the core of it to be, but and instead it kind of maybe gets a little muddled around for some of these kind of more traditional like scares and stuff. But I do like that idea, and maybe I mean, again, I did like it, but maybe if they did more of that kind of stuff, that would have pushed it above just the kind of the, oh, okay, this is good, to like, oh wow, this is like actually something special.
If I was going to try and fix it and maybe help the pacing, what I would do, I think, is have the flash forward, if you will, in our head be much shorter, be 5-10 minutes, right? Just enough that it's more than a scene, but not so much that it's dragging the pacing down. And then you reveal what it is, and you have her go in and out of it throughout the movie, right? And each time it's longer, but obviously in future times you wouldn't go with her necessarily. You'd still have the real sister in the real world and like how she's dealing with things, right? Maybe it'd cut between them. And then at the end, when it feels like she's properly sunken into the fantasy, she makes the choice in her fantasy, no, I need to come out of this, I need to help her. You have it like gradually get to that point.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Yeah. And that way it's back and forth, so it's got more of like a structure in terms of bouncing back and between, as opposed to this big 30-minute chunk, and then the twist, and then it's okay, now it's just all this stuff. I don't know, like, because you could play with it, you could have her like go into the fantasy right before something bad's going to happen, and then we come back after the fantasy and we're like, oh, what happened? What happened? What did she miss? What horrible thing happened to her when she was gone? And that could be like a reveal moment. That I think there was stuff to play with here, and I don't think it does a lot with it. I guess is what I'm saying. I think overall, despite the fact that it looks pretty good as a movie, it ends up feeling a bit more generic than it should. Despite the fact that it's playing with these wacky ideas of fantasy worlds and whatnot. Because the movie ends, they're getting taken into an ambulance, and the ambulance, the paramedics talking to her, Beth specifically, and they've both survived. And he's like, oh, you're really tough getting through all this. He's trying to be nice to her, just sort of give her a bit of a pep talk as they're driving to the hospital. And he's like, oh, do you play sports? And she's like, no, I'd have lost that bet because you're really tough. And the movie ends with her just going, I write stories. And then it cuts to the credits, and it's like piano starts playing, and I'm like, okay, all right. Also, can we talk about the weird moment as they're running from the house, and she turns and sees, like, in her head, the ghost of her mum pointing to the typewriter to say, write your stories, don't let this dissuade you, write the stories.
Yeah, it's a little sweet. I mean,
it's still on the nose. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, we've established at this point that this girl's batshit crazy, so she's probably seen her mom everywhere.
And I know people
I,
are going to argue for it. They're going to say, "Oh, she even says when she's been interviewed as the writer in the fantasy that she's like, oh, this book is therapy for everything I went through. Just like this fantasy is a way of coping with everything she's going through." I get what it's doing. I don't know. It's not nailing
yeah,
it for me.
yeah, if it doesn't work for you, it's not much you can do about it. I did like the like there's this thing kind of set up early on where there's this like I forget what they call it, but it's like a little cabinet or something where a doll
Oh,
pops out of.
it was a Chinese something box.
Yeah, yeah, I forget the exact name, but
It was a mirror with a hidden button that opened, and it was actually like a closet that you could go into.
yeah. So at the start, it seems like kind of just like a cheap jump scare, but I did like the scene towards the end where it kind of comes back where she's hiding into it, and I just thought that like looked really cool, the way she was just surrounded in like complete darkness and then kind of like fighting with this puppet to make it not make any noise. I just thought that looked pretty cool.
Yeah, the movie does look pretty good. I wouldn't fault it on the visuals too
Yeah,
much.
I wish there was maybe like that to me felt like a little more like not that the rest of the movie is bad, but that felt like a little more stylized to me, which is like, oh, I wish there was more like interesting stuff to look at like this. Same thing with like towards the end when she has like her second break and she's in this the fancy party or whatever, but then there's just that one door she's looking at that's like the window to her sister, and you just see like the juxtaposition of like this fancy dinner party with her crazy beat up sister just banging on the glass and stuff, which I wasn't sure if that was the incident where that occurred, but yeah, I did think like that was again something else that like looked kind of cool and interesting.
I think they had they had this idea, right? They were really proud of their idea, but I don't think they developed it enough to actually and thought about how it really worked in the movie. Because they've done their idea, and it feels like they should have really thought about this more. I think it needed a better script. Ultimately, I think that's the biggest problem with the movie. Is it needs a better script.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I think we have kind of like a similar opinion just on like different like sides of the line here, like like because I also think like I feel like it's more like, oh, I liked it but I think it could have been better, and it kind of seems like you're more like I kind of didn't like it but kind of thought it could be better.
Yeah, yeah. And if that doesn't set us up for ratings, Timmy, I don't know what does. Tim, what would you rate Ghostland out of 10?
This is a really tough one. I'm interested to see what you're gonna give it, because now I feel like because at first I thought like, oh yeah, this is like a decent score, but I feel like you're gonna be like, whoa, that's way too high. But honestly, I think I would give it a 7. I think like I enjoyed it. I didn't love it. It could have certainly been better, but I don't really have like too many complaints.
I think overall I have to go with a 5. For me, it's like right down the middle where there's ideas that I like, there's some moments that I like, especially at the start, but they sort of like I think there's a couple of bad acting moments, particularly from the adult Beth. I really she rubbed me the wrong way a couple of times. The teens are not bad though. The teen actors for I mean they're probably not actually teenagers themselves, but the teen characters, Beth and Drew I thought were pretty good.
Yeah, and the only thing that ever really stood out to me is the mother. I don't think that, not that she was a bad actor. I was just really curious. She had like an accent and like the kids didn't, and so I kept wondering like where she was from or something. Like obviously
the actress is from Quebec, I believe, and the film actually is a Canadian production. So
oh, interesting. See, I was assuming. Well, I guess that would make sense because Quebec's kind of like French area of Canada, I believe. Because I was wondering, like, oh, it's like she French or something? Because it kind of sounded like she was French, but
was her speaking French, and then the kids going, "Don't speak French." not a hint enough that she was French.
Yeah, I still had my doubts. I was like, well, we'll see. Okay. Show me the birth certificate.
And I suppose technically she's not French, she's Canadian, but the character might be French because they don't specify it in the movie.
True, and yeah, and I'm assuming the director is French because it seems like
most likely, yes.
But yeah, again, that's not bad acting, but it was the only maybe acting that stood out to me as being kind of like, oh, I wonder what up with this.
Yeah, it's yeah, I don't know.
I think it's worth. I would say it's worth checking out. Maybe it seems like something will probably be streaming at some point. So I'd say give it a watch. If it's on some device at something, maybe don't rush out to download it or whatever. But I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I think it's straight down the middle. It's got some ideas, doesn't capitalize on them. It's not the worst thing ever, but it's not particularly good either. So it's in this really frustrating place right in the middle. So 5 out of 10.
Aren't those just the funnest ones to talk about?
I know. Somehow we found a way though, Tim.
Life finds a way, as a person once stole from me. I came up with that line.
Look out for the Jurassic World 2 review coming up soon. Actually, no, it's already up by the time this goes up.
What? You already saw it? Oh.
It's alright. No, I've not seen it yet, Tim. By the time this goes live for everyone, the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom review with me and Matt will already be up, because we'll be doing that on Sunday, I believe.
I'm excited.
Which, if you're watching this or listening to it, that's already happened. That was already past Sunday. So,
see now who's time traveling. I'm excited for it. I don't know when I'm gonna get the chance to see it, but I do want to try to sneak out at some point this weekend and give it a shot. I'll admit it. I'm kind of a sucker for dinosaurs. I give most dinosaur movies a pass as long as they have dinosaurs in them.
Is that you telling us we have to do Tammy and the T-Rex at some point?
I never even heard of that movie, but I would say we should do Carnosaur at some point.
Ooh, we'll discuss
and
it.
Maybe we'll do a maybe we'll do an episode of just us reviewing the cutscenes from Dino Crisis. Who knows?
Hell, we've been talking about streaming games together. I think Dino Crisis might be a candidate down the road.
Yeah, I'd be down for that.
Do some Dino Crisis action.
Good.
But hey, so yeah,
that needs a reboot. Where's that remake?
Come on, Capcom! Once you're done with Resident Evil 2, get us some Dino Crisis action. So that has been Screws After Midnight. That has been Ghostland. So let us know what you think of the movie in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on Patreon.com.
By the way, I forgot I was gonna try to sneak in some Zombieland joke at some point, and I don't know. I was gonna ask you if wait, is this related to Zombieland or I don't know, but I didn't. So stop writing those angry tweets.
Get us on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. If you want to support us, you get the right to vote, you get the right to add movies to the crypt, which is a to-do list of movies that our patrons get to submit to. Everyone can see the list, but patrons get to submit to it. So you can do that. There's lots of bonuses. You can support us that way. Even $1 a month is a fantastic bit of support, which is better than you just watching the ads on YouTube. But obviously, if you can't do that, then watch the ads and like and subscribe and all the usual things that help. One thing I've been trying to do recently is promote other content. Just one thing at the end of each show for another show that's on Mail Fuzz. So I will take the time. Me and Connor just get back to reviewing Star Trek: The Original Series once per week. We're about halfway through season 3, and we are when we finish that, we're going into the movies, then we're going to the Next Generation, and we're going to keep going. It's a long journey, and we're halfway through the 3rd season of the original series. So that just came back this past week. So go check that out if you're into Star Trek.
Wow. Okay.
I'm sorry, Tim. Do you not approve of me promoting other content on the show?
Whatever. If you want to watch Star Trek, that's fine.
You'd love it. All right. This has been Screws After Midnight. We talked about Ghostland. Thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, guys. And we'll see you next